So moving to the second panel in management and orchestration. First of all, thanks to Dinesh and the three panelists, Alok and Krishna and Justin. So I'd like to introduce the next moderator, Mark. Please come on the stage, Mark Weiner. And where's the slide up for me for Mark's? Yeah, Mark
You're
is this.
a panel even if the slide's taking its time.
Yes, and Mark is a good friend of mine and a CMO of Centrify. Take it from here, Mark.
Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for joining us on this Friday afternoon for our cloud orchestration panel. So we'll have a good interactive session here. We're going to build upon what you saw in the first panel here. Dive a little deeper into really into cloud orchestration, how it plays at multiple levels of infrastructure, app, and user. So with me today, we have very interactive. We have Ravi, who is a CEO of ElasticBox, has been with it for most of its existence. We have Chandra, who is a partner at McKinsey, focused on the IT practice and advises large Fortune 500 companies on their IT strategy. And then we have Prabhakar as well from the Fabric, as well as a serial entrepreneur, currently, again, leading strategy for the Fabric, which is a seed stage venture fund focused on the networking sector. So I'd like invite each of our panelists, and I'll time you here, I told them 60 or 90 seconds, give just a little bit of background and their area of focus and how that's relevant to both our topic and to all of you folks as entrepreneurs. Prabhakar.
Sure. So Fabric is a co-creation company. We co-found a company along with an entrepreneurial team and work with them as operational founders for 6 to 9 months or 12 months, whatever it takes to get them to the next stage of their growth with the full venture funding and with a complete team and validation and everything. And we help them in a lot of other ways in terms of foundational technologies and offshore development centers and all of those things. And we do help them get going in the initial stages with the capitalization as well, so that they don't have to scrounge around for money. The relevance for Fabric here is really that we are focused only on co-creating companies in the cloud and virtualization space. And that's the only thing that we focus on. Sorry, no mobile applications. So only infrastructure companies. So we have created a couple of companies in this space, and we'll have more. We have a booth here, booth 340. You're welcome to come and see. So we'll be able to explain more there. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ravi.
Awesome. Again, thank you for having me on the panel here. Again, thank you for your time as well. I was on the previous discussion. I think if I were to summarize what we do is everything that these guys discussed, Justin, Alok, and Krishna, what they were talking about. So ElasticBox is a DevOps platform to enable enterprises that are going through this transformation of delivering the agility on the application side while providing the stability on the operational side. That's too much marketing lingo, but at the end of the day, it really is how do you adopt the seamless innovation that is happening from the application side and from the operational side, whether it's a public cloud, whether it's a private cloud, or a hybrid enterprise cloud that you want to create, how do you seamlessly deliver applications? And I remember Justin saying orchestration is a secret sauce. I want him to come and talk to me at some point in time, because orchestration is being done from many angles, compute perspective, application perspective, infrastructure perspective, and there is innovation on the network perspective. So the angle that ElasticBox is taking is in order to consume this infrastructure, the reality is that you need to optimize it from an application angle. So ElasticBox as a DevOps platform is what I really want to talk about here.
And the marketing time police is off to our third panelist.
Sure. Chandra Gnanasambandam. I am a partner with McKinsey's high-tech practice here in the Valley in our Palo Alto office. I serve a couple of large, really large tech companies that are very much in the heart of the space, right? Cloud and all the way from infrastructure layer to the applications layer on a range of strategy, go-to-market, and operational topics. That's the second part of what I do, which I think will be even more interesting here, is as part of our business technology practice, I spend time with a lot of CIOs and CXOs of Fortune 500 companies on the infrastructure architecture and the infrastructure strategies going forward. And so that's, so, so kind of can bring both those perspectives to the panel here.
I'm hoping to.
Great. So hey, as we jump in here, guys, the first question we have, virtualized data centers have been around for quite a while. VMware and others brought this to light easily a decade ago initially. So, but they're becoming more dynamic and automated. What do we see as, again, data centers really are evolving? What impact do we see both, Prabhakar, initially on the infrastructure side, then perhaps a little bit, Ravi, there on the app environment, and then finally, standards-wise and overall orchestration-wise, maybe Chandra. So maybe jumping in first, Prabhakar?
Yeah, so from the infrastructure side, I think you're right. They've been around for a while, but most of that has been in the compute side of things, and later storage has been starting to catch up. But it's only now we are seeing more innovation and more changes taking place on the networking side. And then there is the convergence taking place in terms of the compute, storage, and networking taking place. And the converged network where storage and application traffic are going over the same thing. With that, you have a high degree of elasticity and sharing taking place in a way that never used to be the case. Yep. And what has happened really is that networking hasn't really kept pace with compute or even storage to that extent in terms of what does it mean to have an automated operation or visibility or diagnostic of it in terms of these spikes taking place or movement taking place or sharing taking place. Whereas previously everything was siloed, right? Now everything is commingled. So how do you solve that is an area of innovation, I think, that is going to come up big way. One other topic I would like to mention is what was in the previous panel people talked about is that virtualization previously was thought of as, okay, I have my data center and I have my virtualization. Now you have that entire data center becoming more software defined, and it is becoming extended to my data center and another place where I'm doing my business. That could be a public cloud or a second private cloud, or moving back and forth. So in some cases, people are even saving multiple clouds, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the topic that we are talking about has to keep pace with these set of changes that are taking place. So network is one area, and the fact that things are happening in more than one place, this virtualization is extending across multiple locations, is something to deal with.
And I'm sure things like both monitoring, managing your SLAs and all that's going to be harder than ever in those environments. So
that's one of the key things is that the systems that used to govern these things in a fixed world are becoming very rapidly legacy, and they're becoming blind. And I think going forward, the systems that are going to really solve the problems are things that use data from multiple domains, take a view across them and apply some deep machine learning type of expertise, so that people just are not able to just eyeball it like they used to. So it has to come from the data.
Sounds like a great area again for entrepreneurs to attack an open area. Hey, Ravi, maybe a little bit then from the app environment. Again, data centers continue to evolve from basic virtualization, very dynamic automation. What do you see from the app environment? And again, both to the users and to our entrepreneurs in the room, what's the relevance?
Right, and it's actually a very good question because it's actually a very good question because at the end of the day, the reason I as an enterprise or as an individual developer want to use that particular infrastructure is to run my line of business application or my application, which is why I even use that particular infrastructure. Now, there's been a ton of innovation happening from the 2000 era of virtualization to now infrastructure as a service, where companies have made it extremely easy for me to consume that compute layer and all the services around it. But at the end of the day, I really need to seamlessly deliver my application. In the previous panel, I talked about make it easy for me to consume my existing legacy application, help me transform it to leverage the innovation that is happening on the on-demand access of the compute and the network and so on. But the reality of the equation is that it is not a secret sauce. That's where orchestration definitely comes into play. There are a lot of pieces to this particular puzzle that are being put together but it's being stitched through orchestration of applications. That is, I have my configuration management on how to deploy this application, how to manage this particular application on that dynamic infrastructure. The consumption model has changed on leveraging that particular infrastructure, and how do I stitch all of these components together so that I can build my application, whether it's a greenfield or take my existing application and bring it onto the cloud. I think that's the innovation that's happening.
Thank you. Next. Chandra, maybe how you advise both clients and our audience here with regard to, okay, what impact either on standards or governance might this have?
Sure. At a practical level, we're not seeing any standards, right? So we don't see the equivalent of a J2E for the app container, right? We don't have, there isn't an EJB. So what we see is, well, there are some emerging standards, right? I'm sure we can have, but nothing at a practical level at a large, Fortune 500 client. What we are seeing is really, so you have VMware and the players who play in the private cloud stack, and then you have the host of public cloud providers, then you have OpenStack, clearly the multiple distributions of OpenStack in the mix now. And we see a lot of very vendor-specific solutions that do the integration and the orchestration across them. And quite frankly, this is really a set of choices that customers are quite confused about, aren't quite prepared to make, right? They need a lot of advice on it, because you have the traditional systems management guys who are trying to play in the space, right? You look at Tivoli and OpenView, right? So you have that. You have every one of the cloud solution providers who potentially claim, quite frankly, they can orchestrate between their platform and pretty much any other platform. Then you have a set of third-party providers whose only job in life is to orchestrate across this, right? So it is a very, very confusing set of choices, and so we don't see at a practical level there aren't too many standards here yet. And that's on standards. From a governance perspective, right? So I'll just note a couple of things. One is the traditional, infrastructure governance is being scaled to this, right? As they move to cloud, we don't see any huge change in the fundamental governance paradigm. But what we do see changing in a big way from a governance standpoint is several of these, as they roll this out as a platform, as a mesh, the infrastructure mesh across the full enterprise. Right. These are becoming board level decisions, right? These are no longer, not even director of infrastructure, not a CIO, not a CEO. These are CapEx board level decisions. 2 or 3 of our large clients have a cloud CapEx committee now, which is a different committee from the traditional CapEx committee, because the traditional CapEx committee just doesn't have the knowledge and the expertise to make intelligent calls on this, right? So there is a cloud CapEx committee, because some of these are $200, $300 million decisions. They might not spend it all at once, but the board is making a decision at that level. And so I think that's the twist here from a governance standpoint we're seeing.
Thank you. Very, very interesting. Maybe to build on that, a question. What do you think about looking at some of the virtual stacks then that are used as we look to build out, these next generation data centers and or cloud infrastructure? What do you think about closed versus open stacks like that?
Sure.
I mean, OpenStack, VMware, Microsoft, as well as what your public cloud providers.
Yeah. So I'm going to, I'll start with the caveat, which is, we at McKinsey Partners, quite often get into trouble when we start talking about vendors. Because pretty much every one of these large guys we serve, and we know the CEO, and someone will, a CEO will get a call saying, one of your partners just talked about, a competitor, not about me. So I'm going to be very careful here. But so that said, that out of the way, so there are 2 or 3 things here, right? One is, OpenStack is very much, I'll tell you, right? So what happened so far, right? So, so there is sort of what happened or what's happening so far. Then there is really the new and emerging one. Then there is a questions that we have gotten in the last 3 months, right? I'll sort of put those in those 3 buckets. And VMware and Citrix and, the host of private cloud providers, that to me is the story that has been, that's a movie that has been playing in the theaters for a while now, yeah?
Yep.
and the movie that just got released is clearly the OpenStack movie, and the service providers have clearly taken the lead on this, right? Particularly the Asian service providers, as they are rolling out 4G. OpenStack is a very, very relevant part of the agenda for them. And large enterprises are clearly beginning to ask, looking at it, doing pilots on it. There are lots of questions about, do I use the Red Hat OpenStack versus the IBM versus Rackspace, which has a different model. And I believe it was yesterday that Oracle announced. So there are all these questions about OpenStack to start with, and then which distribution, and that's sort of the movie that just got released. The movie that's sort of not quite released, but just in the last, strangely last 3 weeks, a lot of questions, and this is very much a reaction to Google, Amazon, and Microsoft significantly dropping the price on their public cloud offerings is, hey, should I think about this differently now? Because the economics have just become quite a bit attractive. And so they are clearly saying there are certain business processes, certain apps with certain performance characteristics that actually lend themselves well, and we will be willing to take some of the risks on the security side to go do this, right? That's sort of the dialogue that's beginning to happen. That doesn't make the whole orchestration discussion any easier, by the way. You have just made it significantly more complex. But that dialogue,
If not less expensive?
well, both, right? But that is a movie. To me, that's sort of the movie that is about to be released, right? So that's how I see it. Hope that answered the question.
No, that's definitely some very interesting things. Just as Chandra was telling us before our panel, I didn't realize 80% reduction in some cases for.
In some cases, I wouldn't.
Up to 80%.
I wouldn't want to be quoted on that number, but yeah.
No, nothing quoted.
That's what Netflix was saying.
Oh, is that right? Okay, good.
Now
they could be
can
quoted.
be quoted then. Prabhakar, on your side, what are you seeing from with regard to some of these architectures? What orchestration systems or stacks and platforms are you hearing from customers, or Ravi?
Yeah, so I'll take a shot. So, Chandra was talking about the standards or lack thereof. Someone once said that standards are really good because there are so many of them. I think you can say the same thing about orchestration systems. Orchestration systems are really good. You have a lot to pick from, right? But typically what you see is domain specific, right? If you are a VMware customer, you see, we see vCenter operations. If you are a Microsoft customer, you have System Center. And then you have the traditional vendors, Tivoli, Hewlett-Packard, IBM, which are kind of like more the Uber cloud management systems. But I think it would be more interesting to focus on how they need to be complemented. So people choose what they, based on what they have. But the issue really is the fact that, as we were talking about earlier, that there needs to be more attention paid to networking, how that extends the capabilities that are already there, because that is something, the new capabilities that people are deploying, is not well reflected in those systems. And the second issue is, I think that all of these things are focused on silos, and now people need to think about how to bring things together. That is what Justin Fitzhugh was talking about. So it has to be, people have to think about it as in a cross-domain fashion and not just in a single silo fashion, right? And then how do you extend that as you think about your network extending from your data center into a public cloud or hosted private cloud, right? So these are the kinds of things, and what we are seeing is that people are talking about the lack of capabilities in some of the existing systems and how they can complement them.
Interesting. Area for entrepreneurship and development.
Some area for innovations, yeah.
Excellent. Ravi.
And it's a great segue into a perspective that is slightly tangential to what Prabhakar was talking about. If you start looking at it from a pure application perspective, my Apache or my WebSphere or whichever platform or service that I'm using doesn't wake up in the morning and say, I want to work on VMware. It actually wants to work on, that particular platform wants to work on an operating system. So historically, when you look at why these silos existed, is, from our perspective, when you think about it, it is each of these vendors, when you think about, have given a management tool set from that particular infrastructure perspective. So that is why it was very limiting to go hybrid. That was very limiting to go and manage it outside of that particular environment. So if you think from an application perspective and manage it and orchestrate it and take care of the application lifecycle management from a pure app perspective, then each of these infrastructures, which is sort of getting commoditized, whether it's public or private, you can seamlessly manage them. And that's the secret sauce from an application perspective.
IT efficiency, and as Justin was saying, the scale to tens or hundreds or thousands.
That's right.
Interesting. Thank you. Hey, guys, I think we have about 5 minutes here. I thought we'd do a quick speed round. What core new technologies do you see, again, both for orchestration as well as for data center scale out, like we say? What are the core technologies? Maybe 90 seconds each here. Maybe Chandra, we'll start with you on the far end.
Yeah, to me, it's really making, it's really making the, hybrid architecture work between, public and private. Because
Makes sense.
this is not McKinsey's point of view, but I am personally quite bullish on public. I think we will see increasingly, right, customers getting very, very comfortable. So then, in that context, then making it work with the, with the private, because that has a place as, as well. So that to me is the most interesting part.
Hybrid, and that's across all layers, obviously, compute, storage, network.
Absolutely, including the app layer.
And app layer, obviously, so an overall environment.
Exactly.
That's probably a key point versus just core infra like we and others have been talking about.
Well, in fact, I would say the app layer is even more important, because that's the only layer that business people care about.
It's the raison d'etre, right?
Exactly, right. So the infrastructure is a nice discussion with the CIO. I think, from a business standpoint, it's really the getting the orchestration of the app layer right is the most important one.
Your stakeholder.
Yes, exactly.
Ravi.
Very good point, Chandra. So there are many pieces to this puzzle. All these pieces exist. The winner will be in who stitches all these pieces of the puzzle together. From an application perspective is where we always speak about. So you have your configuration management. By the day, there's innovation that is happening on that area with chefs and puppets and Dockers and a whole bunch of containerization that's happening. But bringing it together and managing them seamlessly between a public, a private, or a hybrid cloud, I think that is where the innovation is happening. And we speak to our CIOs, we showcase our solution, and it definitely resonates with them because we come from that particular angle of app perspective.
Makes good sense. Prabhakar finishes.
So I think the biggest recent change has really been the opening up of APIs for a lot of these infrastructure components. So I think one of the biggest areas where people have to make advancement is really to unearth really actionable insights on how you apply these APIs to close the loop. I think that's an area not much has been done at the infrastructure level. At the application level, people like Elastic Box, they have been doing more of the orchestration in terms of deployment. And whereas in the infrastructure level, it's been mostly about provisioning and not about dynamic reprovisioning and fine-tuning. I think that is an area that is ripe for new technologies.
So APIing in down to the infra, depending which component to glue in, so that you can do that.
And
you can do that scale and
adjusting
migrate location.
And adjusting as you are going along.
Actually,
React.
sharing that information from the network to the application and from
Great
the compute
point.
together, so you learn throughout and optimize at every single level. I think that's disruption.
Mark, I think is the answer to your question on standards. that's how it's going to evolve.
And in the midterm, do we see that coming again from the app vendor layer, the infra layer, a brand new third party, or a high-end SI like you guys? And that's the Chandra there first.
Yeah, we don't quite think of ourselves as, as an SI, but still, I'll still take that question.
As a very high-end management consultant, let me retract my term.
No.
From your very high-end on the service side or the vendor side, and if so, where? That's my question.
No, it's okay. Sorry, your question was on.
So, do you see it coming really again from?
Oh, I see.
From
got
where?
it.
From what source might do that?
No, I know. You know what? I really think there is an opportunity for a standards body here. What Sun and J2E did, right? I believe there is a big opportunity for that here. I know that there are a few that are already in development. The OpenStack guys have one, and there is a debate on whether that should be the standard. But I do believe there is a place here for a real standard to emerge and really drive the adoption of that.
Interesting.
That's my hypothesis.
As an entrepreneur, standards do happen after disruption happens from a startup. So this innovation is not going to come from a big boy player. Because of vested interests, that is an opportunity for young startups to come in and disrupt so that emerging bodies can standardize them and eventually big boys can adopt them.
Interesting.
I think the pace of change is just, there are so many disruptions that are converging at the same time in terms of the big data, in terms of the mobility, in terms of bandwidth doing commodity. So it is going to be very, very difficult for people who are not agile and nimble to really pull it off. So I think it is the domain of entrepreneurs and innovators. So I think it is going to come from innovative new companies.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys very much, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, guys.